Because it's his birthday week, I'm going to talk about someone who is probably the biggest influence as a singer and songwriter in my life. And this video is a little bit scary to make because he was such a big person in my life and I lost him in a really tragic way. But as far as musical influences go, he's very important to me as a person and a musician, and I just hope I can do him a little bit of justice in this video. And I'm talking about Shmootzi the Clod. That's his clown name, and his non-clown name was Drew Kyriakidis. And he was adopted in Texas and raised in South Florida. I think he was born in the 60s, and he grew up pretty religiously Christian and even attended seminary school, but was kicked out of seminary school for letting homeless people stay in the dormitories, which is kind of an ironic thing about it when you think about what Jesus would have wanted, I think. And after that whole episode, he became a traveling musician, and a lot of his songs have this kind of playful sacrilegiousness to them that I think the playfulness comes from still having that sacred heart and openness and values that he grew up with, but also wanting to criticize the hypocrisy and missing Jesus's point that comes up in Christianity a lot. And he has all kinds of songs that are bitingly political and just cover a lot of really heavy topics, but also are really playful and silly. And I think that balance is a really important element that I got from him, and always really witty lyrics and attention and homage to old styles of music, cabaret and old jazz and old country. And these songs just flowed out of him this way. He would write at his typewriter and just hardly even knew the names of the chords sometimes, just put them down on his guitar and would show them to us. I was in his band called God's Favorite Beefcake, and it was the first band that I was ever in, pretty much, and the first band where I was encouraged to start writing songs, and I would be really excited to show him new songs when I would write them. And he always had a really lot of good encouragement and feedback, and with anyone who showed him songs, he just had a really special ear for truly hearing what someone was saying in their song the first time, and that's not always that common. And he had a song about leaving South Florida called Goodbye Honky Town, that is about the KKK and misogyny and things that he encountered there. There's so many planes going by overhead. I hope this is still audible. And he had a lot of dirty songs that were really funny and political in their own way, and just challenging gender stereotypes and beliefs about sexual impudence and all these things. And I've written a lot of dirty songs since then that were inspired by him. I've always been silly and into this kind of songwriting, but he really brought it to a new level. I very rarely actually got to see him perform from the front once I started playing in his band, because I was always standing behind him. But the few times I would be in the audience just watching him sing and play, I would always think, yeah, I always forget what an engaging performer he is. One of the most engaging performers I've ever seen. And it's not even because he would like jump around the stage and be wild, even though occasionally he would do that. He just had so much expression in his face and his hands, and always showing so much emotion, perfectly aligned with his songs as he performed them, that you just would get completely drawn into his performance and really hear his songs in a way that often people can space out when they're listening to original songs that they're not familiar with, but he would just draw you right in. And he was always a circus performer. Between songs, he'd tell jokes and hammer nails into his nose, and I would hula hoop, and another girl in the band would juggle, and we all had kind of circusy names. And in that band was the first time I ever got to perform any of my original songs live and start thinking of myself as a songwriter. He also wrote a lot of really, really prophetic songs about politics and the environment and the state of humanity, and the apocalypse. Apocalyptic songs were a very recurring theme for him. And he and the bass player in that band ended up kind of becoming like my surrogate family. I moved to Seattle in my early 20s and was pretty estranged from my family at that point, and getting to play with them and spend so much time with them was really grounding for me. And I would spend Christmas with them and Thanksgiving with them. They lived in my neighborhood. And in 2012, there was a mass shooting at the cafe and bar where we played every week. We had played there every week for the past 4 years that I was in the band, and even longer for the people who were in the band longer than me. And in the mass shooting, Drew was killed at gunpoint, and the bass players, so those were kind of like my surrogate dads. And a few other close friends of the band were killed in that shooting. And after that, we were all struggling to be able to sing his songs for our memorials and everything, because it was like people called it church, coming out to see us every week at this cafe. And so we would always sing along, and us in the band, we all had our parts and our harmonies and everything, but only a couple people in the band had already been able to really lead the songs themselves, so we're just scrambling to be able to do it and hold church again during our grieving period. And it was at this time that we noticed more than ever how prophetic so many of his songs were, even about being afraid of being murdered and everything. And one of the songs that I learned for one of his memorials was called "We Shall Not Be Moved." And when he first presented this song to the band to play, we had 3 women in the band and a few guys too. It was a big band sometimes. And he had the women play the part of the sirens, and we would sing in harmony at this one part. But this song I still do occasionally, especially on anniversaries and birthdays related to the band. So here's "We Shall Not Be Moved" by Shmootzi the Clod. The waves are all weeping at the bottom of the sea. The world remember standing behind him when he was singing just in rehearsal once and listening to his voice and just thinking, I feel so lucky to be standing next to someone who's such a beautiful singer and writer. And so happy birthday, Shmootzi, and thank you for listening to this.